We'll have it corrected next week. But we're really glad that you're here with us, particularly the church members of Presbyterian Church of the Covenant. Thank you for joining together. One of the ways that we can stay connected is in the comment sections below. Leave messages, thoughts, and to everyone, let us know where you're from. Connect with us. Ask questions about what we talk about. Put your thoughts in. We'd love to hear from you. Happy Easter, everyone. It's good to have you here. Reminder to our church members, right now, our ability to continue financially depends on you. So please, if you're able, keep sending in your donations. Go online at thinkingchurch.org. You can donate that way. We're just glad that we're able to continue to do this even in these difficult times. Today's Easter message is based on a reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 1 through 5. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb taking spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, and when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, and the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen." May we add blessing and understanding to the reading of these words. My message this morning is entitled Love Wins. If, like we talked about last week, Palm Sunday is about confronting the powers that be, Easter is about how far the powers will go to protect their domination. But it's also the story of how far love will go for the sake of divine justice, a story of the resurrecting power of love and hope. Even with the gruesome reality of Jesus' suffering on Good Friday, our modern understanding of Holy Week and Easter has undersold the dangerous reality of the implications of the Easter story. In some ways, the Easter story should actually leave us all quivering in our boots. It should also inspire us to acts of great love that might even put us, frankly, at great personal risk. As I talked about last Sunday, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, humbly riding into town, bouncing around on the back of a donkey that had never been ridden, and people gathering to greet him, singing and shouting, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." It signals to us that this Easter story is going to be about confronting the powers that be. Now, in stark contrast, the actual ruler of the region, Prefect Pontius Pilate, basically the governor, as I've said, would have made quite a different entrance. A Roman official. Well, as a Roman official, he would have paraded through the front of the city gates on a mighty steed and surrounded by Roman soldiers. The confrontation of the powers that be begins with that quiet announcement as Jesus rides in on the donkey. And it happens as people are gathering in Jerusalem to observe Passover, the annual commemoration of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt to escape a repressive, enslaving government. It happens in a setting that recalls the power of the people. This whole event, it's in a setting that recalls the power of the people when it comes to escaping tyrannical and oppressive regimes. Now, as you might imagine, Rome actually being a repressive government was well, they were somewhat worried about this kind of celebration. The Romans certainly didn't want the Hebrew people to get any ideas about another Exodus. This time, of course, from the occupying Roman government. Now, given these realities, we begin to understand how that first Easter would have been quite dangerous. After his humble entrance into Jerusalem and seemingly out of character, Jesus enters into the temple, strikes at the heart of the main source of the religious institute's funding. Because you see, the money changers and traders who had set up shop there in the temples, they used their monopoly there to take advantage of the mostly poor travelers who had come to the city. And since the religious institute and the government they were very closely tied, Jesus' cleansing of the temple, as we said last Sunday, was the beginning of the end. He'd gone from being sort of an annoying sideshow, along with all of the other supposedly supernaturally endowed teachers of the time, and there were quite a few at the time. He'd gone from annoying sideshow to being a really viable threat to the state. The powers that be began to conspire against him, just as the powers that be will always do when they are threatened. Now, as I concluded last week saying, this point is the beginning. From this point on, the storyline gives us a reality check as to how far the powers are willing to go to protect their status and their wealth. Confronting the powers that be can be dangerous work. It should not be taken lightly, and it can be unsettling, uncomfortable, and downright unnerving. The powers that be will never go down gently. They never do. They use every tool available to them to maintain their status, their wealth, and their control. In confronting them, we risk our good name, our freedom, and at times even our lives. Yet, we are morally obligated to confront them. Yes, we are called to do so lovingly, but confront them we must, because they will not relinquish their power gently. Which, on a day like today, Easter Sunday, brings me to the question, why did Jesus die on the cross? I suspect that question has been asked since the day that Jesus actually did die on a cross. Now, the most common answer for many Christians, one that will be heard many times again and again this Easter, at least in sermons, is that he died on the cross to pay for our sins. That's known as penal substitutionary atonement. And in truth, that's actually a relatively recent concept. In fact, it only became a part of Christian teaching about 1600 years after Jesus was crucified. And frankly, I for one doubt that was the reason that Jesus was sentenced to corporal punishment. Amongst his greatest teachings was this: no greater love has anyone than this, but to lay down their lives for one's friends. Why did Jesus die on a cross? He died on a cross because he offended those in power. He died on a cross because he challenged the status quo. He died on a cross because love would not sit silently by as those who had little were being stepped on, used, and abused by those who had so very much. Why did Jesus die on a cross? He died because the powers that be feared what love looks like in action. As I've talked about before, for me, sin is any action that separates us from God, the universe, from love. The actions that separate us from God are unloving actions. And Jesus came to teach us that the law was supposed to be designed to help us avoid those kinds of unloving actions. And he also, and this is important, he also came to show us what the fullness of love looks like in action. It looks like healing people who are hurt. It looks like feeding people who are hungry. It looks like loving people who are shunned. It looks like defending people who are overwhelmed. It looks like friends sharing food together. It looks like grieving over the loss of a friend. It looks like a conversation over a cool drink of water. It looks like helping along the celebration at a wedding. It looks like helping the lost find meaning in life. It looks like confronting the powers that be, even in the face of known personal risks. It looks like a man sentenced to death by the government because the threat of death from the most powerful government on the face of the planet was not enough. It was not enough to subdue his love for those who were being taken advantage of. Did Jesus die and save us from our sins? No. I mean, yes, but it wasn't a moment in time that erased our sins by some magical, mystical show from above. Jesus' death showed us how far love will go, what love looks like when it's played out to its fullest. It also taught us a very important lesson about what happens when we consistently and lovingly confront the powers that be with nonviolent resistance. You know, for just a moment, no matter what your actual views on the Easter story are, stop thinking about it as something that someone thought to be true, recorded, passed down. Instead, let's just briefly consider it as a parable. And in this parable, our protagonist spends his life confronting those who abuse their power and steps on the least of these. And he confronts those powers that be. And the powers that be decide that they need to squash him out, basically. They need to kill him, bury him. They believe that they are once and for all, after that, done with him. But this Easter parable tells us they are not. See, he returns. He goes to his friends and tells them to spread the good news to all the earth. And they do. See, taken as a parable, the good news that they spread to all the earth would be this: with love, there are no endings, only new beginnings. The powers that be sought to end him, but they could not. As a matter of fact, those particular powers that be have long since fallen. But the movement of love that was reborn on that first Easter continues on to this day. You know, that's the moral of this story. The powers that be are always ultimately ended by loving, nonviolent resistance. When there is love, endings are nothing more than new beginnings. Put simply, the moral of the Easter story is love wins. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. I hope that you'll join us again next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next Sunday message. I promise you, I will have a new mic and the sound will improve even more. Until then, have a fantastic Easter Sunday. Stay home though. Stay home. Wash your hands. Love one another.